I'd say one of the coolest thing I've observed as we've shifted more and more clients to ecosystem ROAS is this thing we've been chanting: break down the walls, right? Just transparency, visibility. And when you realize that we really are all on one team, right? And you have a choice as to where to spend each dollar. And now as a team, let's choose where to spend that dollar, whether it's on Facebook top of funnel, Facebook middle or bottom of funnel, or Google top of funnel, generic search, or is it Google branded search? And each of them have limitations. You can only spend so much efficiently before you reach this diminishing return. And as a team, if you can have that, collaborative conversation and say, let's maximize all the places that we have the highest return, and then spend on the least efficient use of spend, but that's where we get scale. It ultimately means fill everything up until you reach the point where you can start scaling on Facebook cold prospecting, YouTube cold prospecting, TikTok cold prospecting. And it's like, yeah, attribution for top of funnel cold prospecting is going to be a little hairy, right? Because especially given the timeline of a decision purchase. And you just have to trust that if you've filled up all your other buckets, that's the place to push. And if you want to grow your business, you're going to have to push.
Brands, we need to talk. It's time to start texting your customers. Yotpo, the leading e-commerce marketing platform, has the most advanced SMS marketing solution to reach customers where they are on their phones. Yotpo enables brands to build unbeatable targeted SMS experiences to create customer connections and drive revenue fast. Visit yotpo.com, that's YOTPO.com, and get personal with SMS marketing today. Hello and welcome to All Killer No Filler. I'm Eric Dick. It is Thursday, and today we've gathered the Pilothouse Brain Trust. We've got Dave, we've got Kyle, we've got Taylor, and we've got Richard representing multiple different aspects of our company to talk about the biggest issues we're facing with iOS 14.5 right now and what we're doing to mitigate to continue to scale for our clients. So Dave, why don't you start right now with the way you see the biggest issue that brands and agencies are facing right now in the iOS 14.5 environment on Facebook specifically?
Mm-hmm. So specifically on Facebook, I think the biggest issue is a loss of signals. And that's an issue both for media buyers as well as Facebook as a tool, given that it has less signals to optimize campaigns for. So what does that mean? It means as media buyers, we have to basically call on a bunch of different tools and strategies that we haven't necessarily had to in the recent past, because we've been able to rely on Facebook and trust Facebook's algorithm and really lean into the algo, power of five, all these different things. Now it's becoming a conversation that's shifting towards how do we take a step back, look at the ecosystem, how do we ensure that Facebook, in addition to Google and TikTok and email, is all driving effective, customer acquisition cost, knowing that the data we're seeing isn't telling the whole story, right? And that's the challenge. That's the biggest crux right now. Is it's very difficult, even as agencies, where we're dealing with clients where our billables is on the line, really, to come to alignment and say, hey, even though on platform it's saying one thing, in Shopify it's saying another. How do we find that truth? How do we build systems that allow us to make decisions and scaling decisions where we're spending additional tens of thousands of dollars per day on the basis that the data we're looking at has voids. Taylor, maybe you could jump in and speak to specifically, without getting into specifics, but what type of range are we seeing across the board on brands?
Yeah, we're seeing in terms of the typical attribution to campaigns and ads, a drop or gap between Shopify and Facebook of approximately 30 to 50%, roughly.
Wow, that's a significant signal loss there. And where are those what are those? Are those purchase events? Are those add to carts? What are those actual events?
Yeah, I was going to jump in and just clarify that, because there's a few different layers here. The first is events. Let's take a Shopify example. Events received by Facebook is one drop point where historically there should be a 1-to-1, right? If there's 100 purchases in Shopify, there should be 100 events received in Facebook. It's not saying those were attributed to Facebook, they should just be received by Facebook. That has been dropping. And then there's a drop below that of the events processed by Facebook. So what's interesting, on June 30th, they actually changed the wording of this. That drop of events received to events processed used to be attributed to what they called discarded events. Now they've bucketed it into deduplicated events. And in the definition of deduplicated, they say, it's duplicated between the browser and the API or dropped. And so really, I think they've bucketed into that or dropped, really implying these are the largely, we suspect, iOS users who no longer can have those events processed for them. So that's where, maybe you're seeing a 5 to 10% drop on the top line of events being received, and then you're seeing an additional 20 to 30% dropped on events processed.
That's interesting. Are we seeing this escalate? Is this because I know we're now, like, most people have probably received these privacy prompts at this point, but have we seen because the last time we spoke about this, I think this was probably just beginning a lot of the loss of signal. Is it something that we're seeing sort of continue to snowball, or is it sort of is it as bad as it's going to get?
So technically this, went live on, April 26th. So all of May was affected, and now all of June is affected, and we're into July. And so when tracking month over month, certainly June is more affected than May. And of course, the worry is if this trajectory continues, July could be worse than June. The good news, and maybe we could, shift this, that's sort of the doomsday talk, right? The good news is that in that time frame, we've had time to rely on these different tools to get us back to a place where accounts are performing, and we can actually look at that ecosystem efficiency and know that we are driving cost-effective customer acquisition. But B, we actually have a little bit more tactical data to make decisions on. So if that's valuable, we could kind of maybe shift into that conversation.
Totally. So what is it that we're doing to kind of keep on spending profitably and spending confidently?
Yeah,
sorry, Taylor, buddy, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking from the Facebook side, we're really kind of going back to our roots and approaching what we know as best practice, but then looking at it through the lens of multiple signals. I know Dave kind of alluded to signals at the beginning. So we're looking at signals beyond just platform stats. We found that's incredibly important because we're seeing the value of the traffic as it grows the funnels for the brands that we work with. And by signals, I mean, we're leaning into tools like Google Analytics. We're even running things like post-purchase surveys as well, related to acquisition, as an extra gauge. And then we're comparing the platform stats with that. So in a lot of ways, we're pulling all those pieces together. And we're also using our own internal tech as well, that we have access to for supporting that as well.
There's a like we're OG media buyers, going back quite a few years here. Richard and I had a good chat today, but the pixel is a thing that is fairly new in terms of media buying on the internet. And I think that a lot of people have become dependent upon it. It's like a self-driving car, are your kids going to learn to drive manual? Do they need to? Should I judge them for that? Probably.
I use a rotary phone to this day.
Yeah, like totally, exactly. And so I think just like the human side of it, you just it's like, you just put your hands on the wheel and you close your eyes and you put on some good music and you take a deep breath and you realign and you open your eyes and you drive down the road, because really nothing has changed except the signals. Like, you lost the lines on the road a little bit, right? It's like a highway that's like going through a construction zone, and you're like, wait, no, I know how to drive on this road, and I know where I'm going on this road. It's just whether or not you look at it in a calm, reserved, collected way, find as much data as possible around you, turn on your GPSs, get your roadmap out, stop at the gas station, find a compass, put it all together and make good decisions and think critically about it, because you make good ads, you buy traffic a similar way. You can't make those instant decisions anymore. And a good example is a good example that came up. We launched a new account, a new brand, 3 days, no sales, couple grand spend or whatever. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And it was the first new account I'd launched in, like a brand new fresh account we'd launched in this new ecosystem. And I was like, we turned everything off, and then I was like, we shouldn't turn it off. I think that it's because there's a 3-day random attribution delay now, because they're scrambling the timestamps on this, I think within 72 hours. And I was like, there's sales coming in Shopify. Facepack, like, it's best practice. Like, we're doing what we do. They're going to come in. They have to come in. They came in, they came in. It took like a day and a half. We kept spending. And I think like there's whether you can just like slam down on tests right now. I wouldn't do that, but I would be cautious and like be confident that you're a good media buyer, be confident that your creative is good, and be confident that everyone's freaking out right now. It's not just you. And stick to what you know, and just be really smart about it, and find the data. And the data can come from other places, which I think is what Dave and Taylor were alluding to.
Yeah, so we got Google Analytics. Is that the source of truth then? Is that what we sort of operate with clients on as a source of truth? Is there a source of truth, or is there the source of truth at this point?
Well, I mean, I think if you're running an e-commerce site and Shopify is your system, Shopify is actually your source of truth. Google Analytics has always been a very useful tool. And I have to say, it's quite funny. I've never seen as many Facebook media buyers using Google Analytics in my life. So that's been interesting. But no, I think your backend system is your absolute source of truth, because there's your dollars and cents coming in. But analytics has got a very important part to play. And I think the one thing that I think I'm seeing, and Taylor and I have spent a lot of time with some of our accounts, just looking at all the signals pre iOS 14 and post iOS 14, to try and figure out what is going on, so we can figure out the data loss, etc. But I think the one thing that it does do is for the data that's coming in, and Google Analytics is picking up and it's attributing to Facebook paid or whatever it might be, those are genuine sales, and in the past, maybe particularly from a Facebook point of view, on Google, from YouTube point of view, you looked at these view conversions and you went, oh, that's interesting. But now we're last click conversions that Google Analytics is picking up, and I think that's going to actually help help campaigns, particularly on the Facebook side of things, because you're no longer saying, well, it's a view conversion, we'll count that. I think now it's a last click conversion, and in some ways, and I think we've seen it already with some of our clients, it can actually benefit what you're doing on your Facebook account, because you're now focused on conversions that you can see coming through Shopify and coming through Google Analytics are actually turning into real business dollars and cents. So it's been interesting.
That's fascinating, Richard, because like you're on the Google side, and the company's split up, and there's Facebook buyers and Amazon buyers and the rest of it. And it's always like, oh, are you sure? It's like a classic agency versus agency struggle. It's like, where's that attribution? Where's that attribution? And our internal teams are like that a little bit, but like we really encourage teamwork, and they do a good job. But it's kind of just simplifying everything a little bit. So there's a loss, but like, is that loss a real loss, or is that an in-session loss? Or is it a third touch versus first touch loss? Like what we have always really focused in is like optimize that last click, that top of funnel in every source. And that's what the tool does. So it's an in-session optimizer, meaning that whether it's an email link or a Facebook link or a Google link, we're optimizing that session and that funnel within that session. It won't fire a conversion if the conversion doesn't come in within an hour. Whereas like Facebook used to go back 28 days, right? Or longer, I think it used to. But Richard, kind of like, I'd love your thoughts on that. Like the idea of gearing your teams to like getting sales day of, as opposed to gearing teams to look for additional attribution?
Yeah, I think, we're already seeing it, on some of the big accounts. If you're optimizing for that day, and you're seeing the conversions come through, and as you said, we've got some great media buyers across the board, and particularly on the Facebook side of things, so them looking at the Google Analytics data now and figuring out that when they spent this X or Y on certain campaigns, and ultimately we saw the both the last click attribution coming in on Google Analytics, and probably more importantly the sales coming in on Shopify. One and one does add up to two, and just because Facebook ads doesn't say that anymore, there is no one as far as Facebook ads is concerned a lot of the time. It doesn't mean it's not true. So I think focusing on that, and just applying the best practices, as you say, that's the thing. The people haven't gone away. The audiences are still there. There's still
the ad slots. There's no fewer ad slots.
Yeah.
Packlane is the one-stop shop for custom packages with your very own team of packaging pros. From concept to prototype to delivery, Packlane manages everything from start to finish. Plus, you only pay for the packaging services you need. No added fees, no monthly payments, and no sneaky upsells. Their team is dedicated to saving you countless hours and money that can be invested back in your business. Visit packlane.com to design your custom packaging today. I wanted to ask too about audience fidelity. Like we're talking a lot about event fidelity, event and signal loss within that. But are we seeing any loss of fidelity of audiences maybe not performing as well as they had, or are we seeing anything on that audience side on Facebook?
Yeah, it's a key question. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about. We're seeing it kind of depends on how you look at the signals. We're seeing some differences. I know from people within our network and some of the brands I'm working with, we're seeing a shift towards broader interests outperforming some of those custom audiences that a lot of advertisers rely on, like lookalikes, or some of those more detailed retargeting audiences as well. However, at the end of the day, what we're finding success with is doing what Kyle mentioned, really going back to leaning into good creative, trusting great creative, reading the signals in something like an analytics, looking at time on site as it relates to audiences and campaign trends, as well as those conversion metrics and some of the other signals we look for. And we're still seeing really good results by doing so, but it is shifting how we approach it a little bit more.
What about pre-sale page content? This is something we're looking at just releasing actually stay tuned in the newsletter. We're going to be sort of offering that workshop that we created about creating pre-sale page content. Are we finding that that kind of content is still effective, or more effective, less effective now in this new environment? I just, in my mind, if you can lengthen the funnel out with people, you can get more touch points and create more data in your ecosystem. Is that true, or what are we actually seeing with pre-sale pages now?
Pre-sales, it just comes down to your audience. Like, honestly, like a younger crowd is not going to want a long form pre-sale. They're too savvy. They're going to be like, this is not what I want to read. They're going to want to go straight to the reviews, and they're going to jump into a cart. So if your product's like skewed younger demo, like don't bother. Pre-sale, like Facebook would, love a pre-sale historically based on the types of users there. TikTok probably wouldn't. Maybe, but then again, it's like Helmkin, our other company, is just destroying TikTok right now using pre-sales, and you just have to test. And I think pre-sales at the end of the day, like iOS, like Eric, we've had this conversation a few times now. Pre-sales increase your conversion rates. iOS 14 makes it hard to see your conversion rates. Increase your conversion rates, you get more conversions. Like the formula is super easy. Find anything to increase your conversion rates that will help you combat iOS 14, like holistically, right? So yeah, that is a tool that we love to use, that we implement constantly.
Nice. Are we seeing any budgetary shifts at this point between any of the platforms that are, now seeing the cold light of day when it comes to attribution? Are we seeing shifts away from Facebook or more into Facebook, more into Google, or staying the course?
From the Facebook side, we're applying a lot of the learnings we're gaining by looking at more signals beyond Facebook, where historically we may lean into that a little bit more. So for example, when we're looking at that cross-channel efficiency, there are cases where we've seen pockets where we may pull back on one style of ad on a platform, lean into it on another, a different one on another that's more efficient, and then focus all that spend in accordingly. So I would say that's actually been a really great learning, big opportunity that has evolved from this as well.
Nice.
I think there's a temptation to go with the last click stuff, particularly Google side of things. Clients love to see those those high conversion rates and the really high ROAS numbers that Google Ads can provide in terms of branded search and some retargeting and that sort of stuff. But to be honest, we haven't been shifting a whole lot more budget to Google. The temptation's there because the numbers kind of show things, but I think it's the wrong thing to do on any clients where we have kind of backed off a little bit on Facebook. We've actually seen a drop across the board because Facebook drives so much top of funnel traffic for a lot of our clients that as soon as you do that, then Google struggles as well. The brand searchers just aren't there because they've got to come from somewhere. So the temptation's there, but we haven't done it, and the little bit of experimentation we've done would definitely back that up. Don't do it.
And it's a bit of a fallacy too, that even like that they're very different things, right? But you'd have to bid more aggressively on a bunch of keywords, or it's not exactly the same as you mentioned in terms of it being top of funnel traffic.
It all supports each other. I think kind of is where Richard's talking about. And what we've in the beginning, there was not every account, but like it was happening. There was knee-jerk reaction. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Pause everything. On some accounts that was instruction. On other accounts it was slowed down and let's look at the data and let's watch it together. Dave has had so many conversations over the last 2 months, training and orientating and realigning not only the staff but also our partners. Clients are partners. And like what I hear from Dave constantly is the importance of overall, and we've always said this is why we're like deep integration, because it's like, listen, you can't do your Facebook right if your Google's not working with your Facebook, and you can't do your TikTok because it's going to grab attribution from your Facebook and you're paying 3 times as much for 3 different partners to manage all this. So bring it all in-house, add your email, let's measure it all together. Dave, I'm going to call you up here in a sec because I saw you dropping your mic off, but like this idea of overall, this idea of ecosystem revenue, brand owners know this. It's about implementing this idea that you already have for yourself, this like blended cost per acquisition cost. What's your overall number? And then ensuring that the sources that are feeding that overall number balance out. Because if you stop your Facebook, your Google's going to die. If your Google's going to die, then your business is going to die. So you need them all talking to each other. But yeah, Dave, I think just looking at time here, I just love to hear some thoughts because you've been in the weeds on this.
I'd say one of the coolest thing I've observed as we've shifted more and more clients to ecosystem ROAS is this thing we've been chanting, break down the walls, right? Just transparency, visibility. And when you realize that we really are all on one team, right? And you have a choice as to where to spend each dollar. And now as a team, let's choose where to spend that dollar, whether it's on Facebook top of funnel, Facebook middle or bottom of funnel, or Google top of funnel, generic search, or is it Google branded search? And each of them have limitations. You can only spend so much efficiently before you reach this diminishing return. And as a team, if you can have that, collaborative conversation to say, let's maximize all the places that we have the highest return and then spend on the least efficient use of spend, but that's where we get scale. It ultimately means fill everything up until you reach the point where you can start scaling on Facebook cold prospecting, YouTube cold prospecting, TikTok cold prospecting. And it's like, yeah, attribution for top of funnel cold prospecting is going to be a little hairy, right? Because especially given the timeline of a decision purchase. And you just have to trust that if you've filled up all your other buckets, that's the place to push. And if you want to grow your business, you're going to have to push.
Love it. Very cool. Well, I've just been told that we have an announcement from the peanut gallery here. We're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. We've got, I think, some other meetings where we're going to be jumping to. But Kyle mentioned he had an announcement to break here on the All Killer No Filler podcast.
Yeah, we try to keep this thing this informative, and we definitely aren't selling on this, but today I am. So I just want to announce a couple things. One, this internal tool we're talking about, it is providing an additional layer of data. And so if you're looking for an additional layer of data or a partner that can help facilitate an improvement in conversion rates, as well as support you through this iOS opportunity, we'll call it, hit us up. We're data driven, and our team is lives on top of this thing. So it's out there. If it's here, if you're out there and you're curious, just hit us up. And the second thing is tied as iOS. When you started, you talked about creative. Our performance geared creative team is now open to the public. So no longer do you have to be a paid media partner to work with our creative team, which is fully trained and equipped to help you manage campaigns, in that they think like media buyers. So a little bit different. If you're curious about that, also feel free to reach out. That'll be the last plug for a long time, but thanks.
I can't promise that. I love to plug, but to be specific, they should email you. I know you're leading the charge on these. Should we just like on the podcast, if you want to chat with Kyle about
shoot it to Dan at pilothouse.co.
Dan at pilothouse.co.
I think that it's a more efficient route into having a conversation with me.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, everyone, today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch back up again soon about this iOS 14.5 and what we're doing to mitigate some of the challenges that it faces, because it's going to be an ongoing thing. That's going to be clear. It's going to be an ongoing situation. And as long as you're having these sort of open, transparent, conversations about this, I think transparency is something Dave talks about all the time on the podcast, and it's now more important than ever throughout your organization to have all these people, these different traffic sources and teams talking, because there's a real opportunity to make things better in the long run from this potentially. Awesome.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.